Thank you so much for having me, especially Viviana and Clara, who invited me to be here, and also Antonella, who made this possible. I was very impressed this evening of all the presentations I heard. I learned a lot, and I admire you all for the work that you do. I will present something very different. I was thinking, when I heard Bianca's presentation, I will be more the mouse under the blue light who talks about her experience tonight. I try to make this transfer of what I learned about vulnerability into then also what I learned about leadership out of that. We are living in a world full of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and maybe sometimes for us, not having all the answers all the time might make us feel imperfect or maybe even embarrassed sometimes. I'm going to share with you a journey, my journey, and hopefully at the end of that journey you will feel a little bit better with your insecurities and uncertainties. In 2014, I had an encounter with shame and uncertainty that strengthened my belief that vulnerability is actually a superpower. I am transgender. And when I came to Liechtenstein as the new CEO of Baloise Liechtenstein, this is the person that my team met. I was 46 years old. I had hidden my female identity almost all my life. I had traveled all across Europe for the last 6 years, living my Angela side on weekends in the privacy of being far away from home. And I had developed a personality and realized I needed to go the next step. But I was still afraid of my environment and how it might react. And this was not my first coming out. I first came out when I was 17 years old. But that was a time when there was no internet, there was no literature that you could read to understand what it means to be transgender. And I came out to my parents and I received anger and rejection from my father. And I received fear from my mother, fear that I would be an outcast, fear that I would have no job and no friends. And we had conversations for about 6 months together with a therapist. And it got more and more painful for me to always tell the same story, so that at some point I just said, it has just been a phase. It's done. And they were relieved, and I have no ill will against them for that, for having that feeling. And I was able to hide to the outside what was happening inside of me, and also a little bit to my inside by throwing myself into work, into my just starting career. But shame and the fear of discovery were a constant companion. And I define shame as the fear of losing the love and respect of people around you for something you deem unlovable and makes you feel worthless and powerless. But over time, I was able to extend my comfort zone and integrate more and more of my femininity in my daily life. up to a point where I knew I had to go all the way. And this coincided also with that I had just enrolled into the Executive Master for Consulting and Coaching for Change at INSEAD in 2013. And when you do that program, you learn a lot about yourself. And I reached even more clarity who I was and who I wanted to be. But you also learn a lot about change and how difficult change is for everyone. And I understood that I had all my life to get to that point where I was ready to make that step and make that transition. But the people around me, not so much. They were not prepared and for what I was about to share with them, and they might feel overwhelmed. I loved my job as a CEO of Baloise Liechtenstein. I was also very afraid that my employer might not be willing to let me transition in the visibility of that role. I have prepared a list of about 150 people that I wanted to talk to in the company. My superiors, my team, people I work with that were important to do my work also in the future. And also, of course, friends and people that I had worked with throughout my career and that I did not want them to learn it from an intranet communication. And I had my first two conversations on May 9th, 2014. And I'm smiling because the first one was with the head of HR. And he is a person of action. So when something happens and there's an issue comes up, he rolls up his sleeves and wants to solve it immediately. And I came out to him, and he immediately said, "Can I call you Angela right now? And let's do an intranet communication tomorrow, and then from the day after, you can come to work as Angela." And I thanked him for his support, but told him also about the list that I had created and about all these conversations that I would like to have. And we had a long discussion because he said, "I understand what you want to do, but I fear that if you do that, this news is just too good. There will be rumors immediately in the company when you start talking about this with people." And for the moment, we left it at that, and I went to see the group CEO. And the group CEO was a person that I had known for years. I considered him a friend. I had prepared a lengthy introduction to ease him in what I was about to share. And after about 2 minutes, he said, "Come to the point. I think it is something important to you." So I talked about my gender identity and my wish to transition. And when I was finished, he relaxed back in his chair and said, "Thank you for trusting me and trusting Baloise with this. And you will see you will have the full support of the company, and you have my support 100%. We talked for another hour about a lot of things, about my experiences, my life. I also told him about the list, and he suggested that I talk to group communication and that we create a communications concept where we talk about the conversations, but also about the internal and external communication then when the moment comes. And that is what we did. And then the real magic happened. I sent out invitations to those 150 people. My team in Liechtenstein, I took together as a whole, as the team, as a whole team together after I had talked to my direct reports in one-on-ones first. And And I went to our biggest meeting room. I created a circle of chairs and put myself in the middle. And when they came in, they were very nervous because there was, before I came to Liechtenstein, there was actually a very painful reorganization, and I had promised them more stability. And when they saw me so dramatically in the middle, they were fearing, oh my God, what does he have to tell us now? And they braced for themselves for the worst, and then they heard something they did totally not expect. I told them about my life so far, about my identity, and that I did no longer want to hide it, that I wanted to live it. I also acknowledged that I understand that this might feel awkward for them. And I also tried to give them some hints of help. For example, suggesting that there were 2 restrooms on the floor for women, that I only would use the one, so that people or women who might feel uncomfortable, they could use the other one without fear of meeting me. And after I had finished with everything I had to say, the room was quiet. And then a young guy from the team in Liechtenstein spoke up and broke the ice by saying, I know it's completely the wrong words that I'm using, but what you just did took a lot of balls. And there was laughing, and then the questions started. Because it's one thing to know that there is something like being transgender, that you see it on television or read it in the news, or having your own boss telling you that he's transgender. And I answered all the questions as good as I could. And in the afternoon of the same day, the women of Liechtenstein came by my desk with a bottle of Prosecco and glasses and said, we would like to toast to our new female CEO. And by the way, you use whatever restroom that is closest. And then also over the next days, employees came by my desk and asked, can I ask other questions? Because it needed time to sink in. And the questions came later. And when they came, I again answered them gladly. When you open up yourself, make yourself vulnerable, let go of your shame, you also create a space where vulnerability is okay. And that was even more obvious when I had the one-on-one discussions with people, especially with my direct reports, but also people at headquarters or in other business units. When I had these conversations, almost in all the conversations, something amazing happened. Because when I opened up and shared my identity and my life, they started to open up as well and started to talk about things they were afraid to talk about. Sometimes it was just that it was something between us that they said, oh, I thought you were gay, but I did not dare to ask. I was too embarrassed to ask you that because you never brought a girlfriend to one of our events. But others really opened up and told me things about their life they would never share at work because they were ashamed of something too, that they were not able to share. And suddenly they had someone who had shared something with them and they felt it's okay because this person knows what it means to be ashamed, and it's safe here to share that. And for me, those conversations were the biggest gift that I had throughout that experience. And the bond that was created through that experience we had together was one of very high closeness, and we are still very close today. And most of those conversations also ended with a hug. And with my employees in Liechtenstein, the way we worked with each other, the way we talked to each other, the way we made decisions, gave each other feedback, did our performance reviews, everything also changed and got to a much more real, a much more open level that we had together.
Angela, I have a question for you. Sorry, prendo un attimo il posto di Clara.
Take the floor.
I want to ask you a question about emotions. When you were a man outside and when you became a woman, did your emotions inside change? Do you have more manly emotion at a certain point of your life? And did you have more, because this is very interesting for our seminar today, to know if there is a difference. You probably took some hormones, I guess, through the change.
Absolutely.
The hormones influence differently. Capite tutti, vero?
Sì.
Okay.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I always answer this question and say, like, I had a female identity. I felt a female identity inside all my life, but I also learned to hide it and to be a man to the outside. But when I transitioned, and especially also by starting the hormone replacement therapy, my whole emotional world changed, because I could feel my emotions much more clearly, and I also said that to Georgia in the break, is also that when you hide part of your identity to the outside, you also do not just cut off you sending to the outside, you also cut off what you are receiving from the outside. And this moment where I was not hiding anything anymore to the outside opened also floodgates to things coming in. And I sometimes describe it that my life went from a black and white movie to a color movie. The way I perceived things, suddenly I was able to perceive it, and I felt everything much more intensely.
Un grande applauso per Angela Matthes. Grazie, thank you so much.